Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Emile. So he's talking about how the earliest education is most important. It's undoubtedly woman's work. The author of Nature meant to assign it to men. He would have given them milk to feed the child. So address your treatises on education to the women. For not only are they able to watch over it more closely than men, not only is their influence always predominant in education, that success concerns them more nearly. For most widows are at the mercy of their children, who show them very plainly whether their education was good or not. The law is always more concerned about property than about people, since their object is not virtue but peace. The laws give too little authority to the mother, yet her position is more certain than that of the father. Her duties are more trying. The right ordering of the family depends more upon her, and she is usually fonder of her children. There are occasions when a son may be excused for lack of respect for his father, but if a child could be so unnatural as to fail in respect for the mother who bore him and nursed him at her breast, who for so many years devoted herself to his care, such a monstrous wretch should be smothered at once as unworthy to live. You say mothers spoil their children? And no doubt that is wrong, but it is worse to deprave them as you do. The mother wants her child to be happy now. She is right, and if her method is wrong, she must be taught a better. Ambition, avarice, greed, tyranny, the mistaken foresight of fathers, their neglect, their harshness are hundredfold more harmful to the child than the blind affection of the mother. Moreover, I must explain what I mean by a mother, and that explanation follows. I appeal to you. You can remove this young tree from the highway and shield it from the crushing force of social conventions. Tend and water it ere it dies. One day its fruit will reward your care. From the outset, raise a wall round your child's soul. Another may sketch the plan. You alone should carry it into execution. Parents should educate their children. Plants are fashioned by cultivation, man by education. If a man were born tall and strong, his size and strength would be of no good to him till he had learnt to use them. They would even harm him by preventing others from coming to his aid. Footnote, like them in externals, but without speech, without the ideas which are expressed by speech, which he would be unable to make his wants known, while there would be nothing in his appearance to suggest that he needed their help. Left to himself, he would die of want before he knew his needs. We lament the helplessness of infancy. We fail to perceive that the race would have perished had not man begun by being a child. We are born weak. We need strength. Helpless. We need aid. Foolish. We need reason. All that we lack at birth, all that we need when we come to man's estate is the gift of education. This education comes to us from nature, from men, or from things. The inner growth of our organs and faculties is the education of nature. The use we learn to make of this growth is the education of men. What we gain by our experience of our surroundings is the education of things. Thus, we are taught by three masters. If their teaching conflicts, the scholar is ill-educated, will never be at peace with himself. If their teaching agrees, he will go straight to his goal. He lives at peace with himself. He is well educated. Now, of these three factors in education, nature is wholly beyond our control. Things are only partly in our power. The education of men is the only one controlled by us. And even here, our power is largely illusory. For who can hope to direct every word and deed of all with whom the child has to do? Viewed as an art, education, the success of education is almost impossible, since the essential conditions of success are beyond our control. Our efforts may bring us within sight of the goal, but fortune must favor us if we are to reach it. What is this goal? As we have just shown, it is the goal of nature, since all three modes of education must work in tandem together. The two that we must control must follow the lead of that which is beyond our control. Perhaps this word nature is too vague a meaning. Let us try to define it. Nature, we are told, is merely habit. What does that mean? Are there not habits formed under compulsion, habits which never stifle nature? Such, for example, are the habits of plants trained horizontally. The plant keeps its artificial shape, but the sap has not changed its course, and any new growth the plant may make will be vertical. It is the same with a man's disposition. While the conditions remain the same, habits, even the least natural of them, hold good. But change the conditions, habits vanish. Nature reasserts herself. Education itself is but a habit. For are there not people who forget or lose their education and others who keep it? Whence comes this difference? If the term nature is to be restricted to habits conformable to nature, we need say no more. We are born sensitive, and from our birth onwards we are affected in various ways by our environment. As soon as we become conscious of our sensations, we tend to seek or shun the things that cause them. At first, because they are pleasant or unpleasant, then because they suit us or not, and at last because of judgments formed by means of the ideas of happiness and goodness which reason gives us. These tendencies gain strength and permanence with the growth of reason, but hindered by our habits, they are more or less warped by our prejudice. Before this change, they are what I call nature within us. Everything, therefore, should be brought into harmony with these natural tendencies. That might be well if our three modes of education merely differed from one another. But what can be done when they conflict? When instead of training man for himself, you try to train him for others, harmony becomes impossible. Forced to combat either nature or society, you must make your choice between the man and the citizen. You cannot train both. So, you got to train man for himself and for others. Combat nature, society. You can't train both. You cannot train society and nature at the same time. The smaller social group, further united in itself and dwelling apart from others, tends to withdraw itself from the larger society. Every patriot hates foreigners. They are only men and nothing to him. Footnote. Thus the wars of republics are more cruel than those of monarchies, but if the wars of kings are less cruel, their peace is terrible. Better be their foe than their subject. This defect is inevitable, but of little importance. The great thing is to be kind to our neighbors. Among strangers, the Spartan was selfish, grasping, and unjust, but unselfishness, justice, and harmony ruled his home life. Distrust those cosmopolitans who search out remote duties in their books and neglect those that lie nearest. Such philosophers will love the Tartars to avoid loving their neighbor. The natural man lives for himself. He is the unit, the whole, dependent only on himself and on his like. The citizen is but the numerator of a fraction whose value depends on his denominator. His value depends upon the whole, that is, on the community. Good social institutions that are those best fitted to make a man unnatural, to exchange his independence for dependence, to merge the unit in the group so that he is no longer regards himself as one but as part of the whole, and is only conscious of the common life. A citizen of Rome was neither Caius nor Lucius. He was a Roman. He ever loved his country better than his life. The captive Regulus professed himself a Carthaginian. As a foreigner, refused to take a seat in the Senate except at his master's bidding. He has scorned the attempt to save his life. He had his will and returned in triumph to a cruel death. There is no great likeness between Regulus and the men of our own day. The Spartan Pedarites presented himself for admission to the council of the 300 and was rejected. He went away rejoicing that there are 300 Spartans better than himself. I suppose he was in earnest. There's no reason to doubt it. That was a citizen. A Spartan mother has 5 sons with the army. A helot arrived, trembling. She asked his news. Your 5 sons are slain. Vile slave, was that what I asked thee? We have won the victory. She hastened to the temple to render thanks to the gods. That was a citizen. He who would preserve the supremacy of natural feelings in social life knows not what he asks. Ever at war with himself, hesitating between his wishes and his duties, he will be neither a man nor a citizen. He will be of no use to himself nor to others. He will be a man of our day, a Frenchman, an Englishman, one of the great middle class. To be something, to be himself, and always at one with himself, a man must act as he speaks, must know what course he ought to take, and must follow that course with vigor and persistence. When I meet this miracle, it will be time enough to decide whether he is a man or citizen, or how he contrives to be both. 2 conflicting types of educational systems spring from these conflicting aims. One is public and common to many, the other private and domestic. If you wish to know what is meant by public education, read Plato's Republic. Those who merely judge books by their title take this for a treatise on politics, but it is the finest treatise on education ever written. In popular estimation, the Platonic Institute stands for all that is fanciful and unreal. For my own part, I should have thought the system of Lycurgus far more impracticable had he merely committed it to writing. Plato only sought to purge man's heart. Lycurgus turned it from its natural course. The public institute does not and cannot exist, for there is neither country nor patriot. The very word should be struck out of our language. The reason does not concern us at present, so that I know it, I refrain from stating it. I do not consider our ridiculous colleges. Footnote, there are teachers dear to me in many schools, especially in the University of Paris, men for whom I have great respect, men whom I believe to be quite capable of instructing young people if they were not compelled to follow the established custom. I exhort one of them to publish a scheme of reform which he has thought out. Perhaps people would at length seek to cure the evil if they realized that there was a remedy. So I do not consider our ridiculous colleges as public institutes, nor do I include under this head a fashionable education, for this education facing two ways at once achieves nothing. It is only fit to turn out hypocrites, always professing to live for others while thinking of themselves alone. These professions, however, deceive no one, for everyone has his share in them. They are so much labor wasted. Our inner conflicts are caused by these contradictions. Drawn this way by nature and that way by man, compelled to yield to both forces, we make a compromise and reach neither goal. We go through life struggling and hesitating and die before we have found peace, useless alike to ourselves and to others. There remains the education of the home or of nature. But how will a man live with others if he is educated for himself alone? If the twofold aims could be resolved into one by removing the man's self-contradictions, one great obstacle to his happiness would be gone. To judge of this, you must see that the man, full grown. You must have noted his inclinations, watched his progress, followed his steps. In a word, you must really know a natural man. When you have read his work, I think you will have made some progress in this inquiry. What must be done to train this exceptional man? We can do much, but the chief thing is to prevent anything being done. To sail against the wind, we merely follow one tack and another. To keep our position in a stormy sea, we must cast anchor. Beware, young pilot, lest your boat slip its cable or drag its anchor before you know it. In the social order, where each has its own place, a man must be educated for it. If such a one leave his own station, he is fit for nothing else. His education is only useful when fate agrees with his parents' choice. If not, education harms the scholar, if only by the prejudices it has created. In Egypt, where the son was compelled to adopt his father's calling, education had at least a settled aim. Where social grades remain fixed, but the men who formed them are constantly changing, no one knows whether he is not harming his son by educating him for his own class. In the natural order, men are all equal, and their common calling is that of manhood, so that a well-educated man cannot fail to do well in that calling and those related to it. It matters little to me whether my pupil is intended for the army, the church, or the law. Before his parents chose a calling for him, nature called him to be man. Life is the trade. I would teach him. When he leaves me, I grant you, he will be neither a magistrate, a soldier, nor a priest. He will be a man. All that becomes a man, he will learn as quickly as another. In vain will fate change his station. He will always be in his right place. Occupavite fortuna atexepi. Some Latin. The real object of our study is man and his environment. To my mind, those of us who can best endure the good and evil of life are the best educated. Hence, it follows that true education consists less in precept than in practice. We begin to learn when we begin to live. Our education begins with ourselves. Our first teacher is our nurse. The ancients used the word education in a different sense. It meant nurture. Educate obstetrics, says Varro. Educat nutrix institute, pedagogis, docet, and magister. Thus, education, discipline, and instruction are three things as different in their purpose as the dame, the usher, and the teacher. But these distinctions are undesirable, and the child should only follow one guide. So, I'm going to break there. I only got 30 seconds or so. So, Rousseau is saying that there's two different courses. You got society's pressure, and then you got the natural inclination. And he is saying that first, man must become a man. Nature should allow a man to become what he is. So, The first 2 books are going to be when Emile is 0 to 12, and he's just going to be allowed to pursue his own curiosities, his own wishes, his own desires. So he becomes his full, complete self. And then once he has become a full, complete self, at 12 he'll start to be educated for society. He has to be of use to himself before he can be of use to others. And so that's the point of Rousseau so far.